CTHREE Public, week 4. Man, we are so excited that you're here. It's a great week. Football is back, praise God. And we are kicking off a new series of messages called Just Friends tonight. Now, over the next few weeks, I want to talk to you about friendships and dating. Because both of those relationships, I would argue, can make or break you in your college years. Tonight, I want to talk about friends, the good ones, the ones that I would say God desires for you to have in your life. How many of you can remember like your childhood best friend? Odds are good that you maybe don't remember them or you probably don't talk to them now, but I bet you had one. When I was growing up, mine was Desrick Frazier. We hung out all the time, played travel basketball together. I remember a few things about him. He had a massive boxer dog named Blaze. And one time, when I was staying the night at his house, we played catch in his yard. I borrowed his dad's old high school glove, and he threw a fastball that went straight through the glove and hit me directly in the chest. Out of all those memories, I have some funny stories. I have some random moments, but for now, like that friendship is mostly over. I haven't talked to him in years, and I'm sure he's doing well, but we grew up and he changed schools, and I don't really see him anymore. I probably should find him on Facebook or something. But we all have friendships like that in our lives, right? Some friends are seasonal. Some friends are lifelong friends. But when it comes to our friendships, especially in college, what makes a good friend? You know, we've all heard those cheesy phrases before that maybe your mom or dad said that you are who you hang with, or show me your friends and I'll show you your life, or how one bad apple ruins the whole bunch. I promise to keep those to a minimum tonight. But I did hear a pastor say this recently, and it resonated with me. He said, the voices you listen to determine the future you experience. The voices you listen to determine the future you experience. And if that phrase is true, I would argue, I really would, I would argue that it is, then I would say that friendships are important and something we should pray for, think about, and evaluate regularly, because those are the voices that we listen to. Because if we're honest, friends are our sounding boards for life. When we have issues, we talk to them. When we just hang out, we text them. They are the voices we listen to and let into our lives. So the question is this: what kind of friends are you giving a voice in your life? No matter what your friendships look like right now, whether you're constantly around church people and Christians, or if you're the only Christian in your friend group, tonight's message, I would argue, is for you. The title of my message tonight is this: Perhaps the Lord. Perhaps the Lord. And it's from a story that I read recently in 1 Samuel chapter 14. And it's a story of Jonathan and his armor bearer. Basically, here's the quick version of the story. Jonathan and his armor bearer attack a group of Philistines in chapter 14, and they kill 20 dudes by themselves in a half-acre plot of land. It's kind of crazy. 2 verses 20 doesn't work out a lot, but it did in this instance. But that's not the part that I want us to focus on. It's actually the conversation they have beforehand that I want to focus on tonight. If I could give one point about the friends we let into our lives and the voices we listen to, it would be this: real friends should push us to take steps of faith, and they'll be with us when we take them. If you look at chapter 14, verse 6, you see Jonathan say something to his armor bearer. He says this: "Come, let's go over to the outposts of these uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." I don't know if you get the picture here, but essentially Jonathan and the armor bearer, they're in a warlike scenario, and he's looking over to the Philistine outpost, and it's covered with Philistines. And he has one of those, it's so crazy, it just might work ideas. He says, "Come, let us go over to the outposts of the uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." Essentially, what Jonathan is saying to the armor bearer is this: let's put our lives on the line. Let's take a step of faith, and perhaps the Lord will provide for us. There's no guarantee, there's no assurances, there's no certainty that it will work, but Jonathan looks at the armor bearer and he says, perhaps the Lord. I love this because in this moment, Jonathan is looking at the armor bearer and he's saying, listen, I don't know what's about to happen, but perhaps God will provide for us in this season, in this situation. And I'm not sure what the armor bearer's facial expression was like to Jonathan in this moment, or maybe what his fears were, but Jonathan simply looks at him in this moment and says, bro, let's take this step of faith and see what happens. When I read this, I simply ask myself the question, how many conversations have I had with real friends of mine that have been perhaps the Lord conversations? How many times am I really leading the charge in my friendships to take steps of faith or to do things that we couldn't do without God? Am I leading my friends to take risks for God in their faith? Or am I leading us to just chill and live lives without any eternal impact? Let me be clear. I'm not saying that chilling is bad or that watching Netflix for 2 hours is against what God wants for you and your friends. Like sometimes that is needed. But what we see in 1 Samuel 14 is this. Jonathan trusted his armor bearer enough to say, man, I think that God may be calling us to this. And the conversation led them both to take a step of faith together. So I think the question in all this is, are conversations like that welcome in your friendships? Are you being called to perhaps the Lord moments in your friendships? And are you calling your friends to those moments with you? Here's what I would say if I could give just one point tonight. Real friends should push us to take steps of faith and will be with us when we take them. Real friends should push us to take steps of faith and will be with us when we take them. And look what happens next. Right after Jonathan pushes the armor bearer to this point of faith that requires him to trust Jonathan, but also trust God for his provision, we look and see how the armor bearer responds in verse 7. And he says this. He says, do all that you have in mind, his armor bearer said. Go ahead, I am with you, heart and soul. You know, we can look at this story and think that Jonathan is like the awesome guy in this story. He's the guy leading the charge, but my guy is the armor bearer. Like, think about it. In this moment, he had every right to bolt. Like, nah, fam, like there's 20 dudes out there. We are outnumbered. Like, we do not have a shot at this. Like, I am out. But also, like, he's an armor bearer. Like, he doesn't even have a weapon. He's not strapped. He's carrying Jonathan's weapons. Like, my dude is walking into a gunfight or a sword fight or whatever kind of fight with just his hands and holding whatever Jonathan needs. But he doesn't say any of that. He doesn't run. He doesn't freak out. He just says this. He says, do all that you have in mind. Go ahead. I'm with you, heart and soul. He doesn't tell Jonathan why it's a bad idea. He doesn't tell him that he shouldn't do it. He says, I'm with you, heart and soul. And in a moment where Jonathan is stepping out in faith and having to trust God, the armor bearer isn't squashing his dreams. He's not saying all the reasons that it won't work. He says, man, if you're taking steps, then so am I. And as a matter of fact, I'll hold your armor while you do it. I love this because it shows how committed the armor bearer is to Jonathan's steps of faith. Listen, C3, the greatest thing that you can do for a friend is be the biggest fan of their faith. The armor bearer says, listen, that may sound crazy, but I'm with you. God's with you. Let's do it. He doesn't leave Jonathan alone in his faith. He joins him. He walks side by side with him into the unknown. I think what I took away from the armor bearer in this story is you don't just need people leading you into battles. You also need people with you in the war. Sometimes when you take steps of faith, when we are trusting God for big things and walking into the unknown, we need to look back and see someone on our hips saying, man, I am with you, heart and soul. See, real friends should push us to take steps of faith and be with us when we take them. So, C3, as we close tonight, here's what I would simply ask you. Are your friends pushing you to perhaps the Lord moments? And are they with you in steps of faith? If not, maybe you are the one that's supposed to begin those conversations. Maybe you need new friends that will have those conversations with you. Maybe the people that are in your house right now could be those people for you this year. You know, at C3, we say all the time that we're not a service you attend, we're a family you're a part of. And the reason that I believe that is so important is this right here. I pray that C3 would be a place where friendships are made that push you to greater faith, greater steps. And if you don't have those friends in your life, if you don't have those people, I just encourage you, C3 wants to be that for you in this season. The voices we listen to, they determine the future we experience. So what voices are you listening to? Maybe a better question is this. Are you a voice someone else is listening to? And if so, what are they hearing? My prayer for us is this, that we would be a group of college students being real friends to one another who push each other to take steps of faith and walk with each other as we take them. I pray that we will be friends that do that for one another this year and in years to come. C3, we love you. We're so excited that you're here. We'll see you next week.